Hey guys, good morning. It's a fantastic morning. As you know, yesterday I went to the mastering engineer. He mastered my final warning track that is now finally done. I can't change anything about it. It's going to be released in just 15 days. Actually 14, by the time you watch it, 13. And now I can fully concentrate on making the next track. And there is one thing that I yesterday learned from the mastering engineer that we talked about. And that is actually something that we realized comparing my track to a David Gutta track, to Martin Garrix track, Kygo, and so on, those big EDM stars. Their tracks just seem to be so much louder than my own tracks. And a lot of you guys always ask me, how do I get my track loud as these people? So there is one sneaky little technique that he showed me, and then there is also the standard one to try to get more loudness out of your track. I will show you and explain you both of these techniques, but first, coffee. There's really no way to function without, especially if you're a music producer, DJ, label owner, daily vlogger. Anything else? No, that's it. All done with the coffee, also all done with all of the business stuff for today. That's also the main reason why it's already past noon, a nice and sunny day, perfect for sitting in the studio. Yes, welcome to my studio. I think we should just start right away with a theory to explain you how this entire loudness thing is happening. So 0 dB is really the highest you can go in any production. There's nothing above it. If you go above 0, it's clipping. So that's definitely one of the limits. Then another limit is the dynamic range. If you crush the things too much, if you hit them too much into the 0 dB ceiling, it will just sound distorted. So reducing the dynamic range is one of the things that will help you to get more loudness, but you have to be careful to not overdo it and find a balance in between. This entire louder making process is really a big compromise. Just imagine your track, your mix being like a box, and you just have a certain amount of space and you have to cram a lot of different elements into it. Let's, for example, take this box. Just imagine this being your mix. I know it's messy, and I also got here a letter from the Staatsanwaltschaft Düsseldorf. I'm getting sued, but that's a whole nother topic. But as you can see, the limit of your track is like the inside of the box, so nothing can stick out. That's like the limiter that is capping your track at 0 dB. And if you now want to add, for example, a bass, which is like a big part with a lot of energy, you have to make room for it to actually make it fit into that mix. Also, for example, if you have a huge kick that is like taking up half of the space, half of the energy, there is not much left for the other elements, especially not for the bass. So you either go for a really big kick with a lot of sub bass, or you go for a big bass. If you try to achieve both, having a fat huge kick and a fat huge bass, it will eat up the entire space of your box, and there will be nothing left for vocals, strings, pads, chords, or whatever you have going on in your track. Finding that balance while getting the most out of the space available is definitely key to make your mix loud. I should probably deal with all of the stuff in here one day, and also all of the contracts that are hidden underneath of that box. It's like Pandora's box. So enough with theory, let's actually get into one of my tracks. That's the track with Gavin, We Runnin', my next single. I will pick like the drop part where we have like the kick and bass going on, and I think like one top guitar sample, and try to make it work, try to make it as loud as possible. And the first step is like the most common, it's actually applying a limiter and maybe a compressor to make it pump, which is really typical for EDM music. So that's the part. It really just has kick and bass in it. I used the span analyzer to show you how loud it actually is. Let's measure it again really quick. So we're right now at -10 dB RMS roundabout, which is loud enough. It's actually a nice loudness that I would prefer. But if you want to be as loud as other EDM producers, you have to go above that to, yeah, almost -6 dB of RMS. And to get there, one thing to do is actually to have more limiting going on, to push the limiter even harder. I usually use the L2 by Waves, and it's already set to -7.9 dB. But we could push it even further. It's now a lot louder. I wouldn't go louder than that. It already now starts to distort a little. Another thing that I also always have in my mastering chain is a compressor that is right in front of the limiter. It just takes care of like the peaks of the track, and the peaks in a track are usually kick and bass, or kick or bass depending on whatever you go for in the low end. And you can definitely see that without a doubt in the metering. If you play the track, the needle is always jumping with the kick and bass. If I mute now the kick, you will see that the compressor is getting triggered way less. And if I take away the bass, it will be not triggered at all almost. So yeah, those two are actually like the main elements that cause the problem of getting a track loud. The more kick and bass you have, the less loud you can actually make your track, because those bass elements take away a lot of energy, take away a lot of space in the mix. So the only option to go even louder than I already went with just like having more gain on the limiter is by reducing the kick and bass. But then on the other hand, it will sound very thin. And if you compare some of the bigger artist tracks, they actually sound thin, especially if they were made for the radio that are more pop influenced. You will hear that they take away a little bit of the kick, a little bit of the bass. They sacrifice it for perceived loudness just to have a track that is more top heavy. So basically, to get your tracks louder, push the limiter a bit harder, push the compression a bit harder. If you still don't get the same loudness, you have to sacrifice kick and bass a little. And if you listen to those big artist tracks, they apply a little trick that I learned yesterday from my mastering engineer. He pointed that out while we compared my track to other tracks. He told me that they EQ away a little bit of the tone of the bass and of the kick, like of the main sound of the fundamental note, the one that is peaking the highest in the analyzer. They EQ it away by 2 or 3 dB to have more room to push the track even louder, but still remain like a perceived feeling of kick and bass. So if you just EQ a little bit away from the tone, the main part of the kick, you will still hear the knock that is sitting higher in the frequency range. You will still hear the top part, the click of the kick, and the listener will still have to feel that there's a kick pumping, especially if you have a lot of sidechain going on in your track. But you actually take away the element that is taking up the most space and kind of leave even the frequencies below it, maybe at 30 Hertz, like the very low bass, so that if people listen to it on good speakers, will still have a feeling of a whole lot of bass. So it's all about tricking the listener into having the feeling of that there's still a lot of kick and bass left, although they actually take it out a little bit. And if you listen closely to, a good example at the moment is definitely David Gutta's track with Justin Bieber. It sounds extremely thin, but if you listen to it on big speakers, you still have the bass sensation going on in the very low end, but the kick and the bass around the kick is actually quite weak if you compare it to a track that is made for the club. So let's actually try it out here on this track. Might not be the best example because it's still mostly like a club influenced track, but if you go for the more poppy kind of music, or you just want a loud track for whatever reasons. So first up, let's go into the sub kick. And as you can see, like the main peak of the kick is right here, right around 50 Hertz. So in the analyzer, we will try to get rid of it a little bit. So first without EQing, and then with. And it definitely sounds better without taking it away, but if you want to get that loudness, you're sacrificing that tiny bit of punch in the low end. And with the bass, it's the same thing. The bass is anyways a little bit too loud, so let's lower it by a couple of dB. What also helps is adding a tiny bit more sidechain. And as you can see, just by adjusting those two things, the compressor is now reacting less to it. This means we are having more headroom and can again push the limiter harder and get even more loudness out of the track. So let's listen again to the entire track. See, we're now again at minus 10 dB RMS, so we pushed it before that to almost minus 6, so we gained 4 dB that we can now push again. So that's basically already it. If you want to get your track really loud, definitely get a mastering engineer. But the thing about lowering your kick and bass to have more room is important to do before the mastering. That's not the task of the mastering engineer. He can't really do a whole lot about it because the kick and bass are already glued together whenever you give the track to the mastering engineer. That was the tip that I yesterday got to just EQ out a little bit of the kick and a little bit out of the bass, of the tone, of the main thing of them to have more room. This way the mastering engineer can make it even louder, and yeah, at the end, up to you if you want to have that really loud sound. I'm all done with work for today. I had a great session, got really far with the track, and I also posted something on Facebook that is quite interesting. That's bright. I posted a pic of your studio thing. If you want to check it out, just head to my Facebook page, and now it's time for something else that is really fun. It's by far one of Vanessa's most favorite activities. Ooh, look at that car. Would that be a nice car for us?
Lexus? Well,
yeah, she just loves meat, so let's get her something. You already know what you want?
No.
Okay, we will find you something. Maybe spare ribs. Yes, we're making hamburgers. Vanessa also got some more meat, special meat for her, and I got some chocolate just for the way. It's important. I didn't eat anything today, and those Kinder chocolate balls are the best. Ready to smell the barbecue?
I'm so hungry.
Me too. You want some?
No, thank
sure?
you.
It's good.
I know.
Okay, gotcha. It's barbecue time.
Barbecue time.
First chocolate. I already had a couple on the way.
Okay, a couple or...
Yeah, half of it, sorry.
Very nice.
Maybe just one more. Or two.